Hi, everyone. We're here with Meagan Anderson today, the Business Development Manager for North America, New Zealand Hops Limited. She's the largest hop cooperative in New Zealand, and she's a certified beer judge and also a certified Cicerone. So we're here to hear her talk, and I'm just super excited. I'm so glad you're hanging in there with all of us, and just cheers, Meagan.
Oh, thank you so much, Melissa. I was thinking earlier today about the first conversation we had, Melissa, about the conference. And we had such a beautiful conversation. We talked about hops, we talked about beer, we talked about life. And ultimately, what I thought was going to turn into just to talk about hops, which is normally what I'm talking about, you asked me to share my story about my life. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity today to speak to this wonderful audience and share my journey to happiness with all of you. So I hope everyone enjoys a quick talk about how to fill your own cup, how to find happiness and success in no matter what it is that you do. And maybe you'll take a few tips and tricks from my playbook. So let me just share my screen here. All right. What if I told you that drinking alcohol and beer in particular was my identity for 20 years? And what if I told you that I failed to stop drinking 1,100 times before I could be successful? What if I also told you that the voice in your head isn't really you, and it can be changed to get the outcome that you want? So today is my story of how I found success in that, but it's also the story of my struggle. I had to learn things along the way that quitting things you want isn't easy. I had to learn that moderation for me wasn't possible, and it wasn't even in my vocabulary at the time, although I wanted it to be. But looking back on my journey of struggling and wanting to change my life for the better and find my own happiness and success, I look back now and I appreciate each one of those 1,100 failures. And I'm 100% certain that without those failures, I never could have achieved success in what I wanted, in living an alcohol-free lifestyle in the alcohol business. Ultimately, this picture in front of you today, which is maybe one you've seen before, is that the map I had didn't lead me to happiness the first time. What I found was the first 1,100 attempts to cut back on my drinking, to stop drinking, to be healthier and happier and feel better, which is what I was really seeking, to be the best version of me, the happiest version of myself. Those directions I had the first 1,100 times were coming from a voice inside that was also lost. And it didn't lead me with words of love, kindness, and respect toward myself. I can remember very early on in my journey having a wonderful executive coach named Stephanie. And Stephanie told me, after speaking to her about some of my frustrations and venting to her about all of the things I thought I wanted to do and why the world wasn't working out the way I wanted it to, while my vision for success wasn't happening the way I wanted it to. Stephanie told me something really interesting that day that I'll never forget. And she said, Meagan, you have quite a few self-limiting beliefs. Has anyone ever told you that? And at that moment, I saw the map that you see on the right and realized that that was the journey I was on. It was a big epiphany for me. And I realized that until I was willing to change the way that I talked to myself, the voice that I was looking for to show me how to get to success and help guide me there would never appear. $1,100 failures to live an alcohol-free lifestyle kept leading me right back to where I had started. For me, a lot of times it was just in another bar with another empty pint glass in my hand and expecting somebody else to fill the pint glass up for me, expecting something else externally to deliver happiness to me. What I had to learn was to be able to change the way I talk to myself and to guide myself inward to a place that was calm and quiet and to a place where I could fill my own cup of happiness and success and not be so dependent on the acceptance and approval of others. But I don't want to bite the hand that feeds me. The brewing industry and beer gave me many things, many opportunities, many friendships, so much professional experience beyond what a small Midwest town girl could have ever imagined. After being the first to graduate college in my entire family, I went on to find mentorship, friendship, training in an industry that I absolutely loved. I started to grow respect and love and really a lot of value for beer. I just was so touched by really what it had done for humanity and society, and I got extraordinarily caught up in that narrative. And from there, I started to create an identity for 20 years that wasn't leading me on the path to happiness. This is the picture on the left of a person who identified as, well, we all have to drink beer, right? We're in this business. My particular jobs were really about leading by example in that way, whether it was teaching people about beer styles or learning to be a judge of beer and sensory, which involved a lot of consumption. And beer had offered me, like I said, so much opportunity, so much success, so many places to go and things to see. But what I want to share with you is how the woman on the left identified with herself and talked to herself. Always trying to force happy, trying to show everyone that what you see on the outside is exactly how I feel on the inside, and that if I kept making that face, that eventually it would happen. For 20 years, the woman on the left believed that drinking alcohol made her accepted in a new crowd amongst her friends, was the social lubricant that was needed to break the ice with people and make other people feel comfortable. The woman on the left believed that after a long, tough week, several pints of alcohol and several beverages made me relaxed, made me rested. The woman on the left believed that alcohol made her the life of the party. The woman on the left believed that alcohol and beer made her credible to her peers, to her superiors, to the people that she wanted to impress and bring along for the ride, to total strangers. I identified so deeply with that credibility and believed that without a real beer in my hand, that I couldn't tell that story of myself, and therefore I couldn't be happy. There was also an element of identifying with the idea that alcohol made me more attractive and more feminine. And instead, on the inside, this person often felt that her head was down. She was often nursing very, very bad hangovers and not really feeling so great on the inside, always chasing away the next hangover. I always used to think that I was in a kind of a concrete jungle with a credit card, taking trips all over the country, all over North America to talk to people about beer and teach people about beer. What I really found was, instead of that, the identity and the voice that was created inside often was filled with anxiety, guilt, disgust, contempt, so much regret, sadness, and not to mention exhaustion, just being tired and not feeling healthy. Well, I'm pleased to tell you that the woman on the right, after 1,100 failures, well, I may not need to say it because the eyes here say it all. That woman learned to speak to herself in a new way. She learned to speak to herself in the way her own mother showed her love. She developed curiosity for herself and others, and a receptiveness to other people's emotions and feelings that just really wasn't there before, because I had just been running away from feeling like I wasn't really myself, which took away from that authenticity. So the woman on the right now sees pure and genuine openness to myself and to others. But most of all, the woman on the right feels alive. And I have a love for life because I feel so good. And that's something that really made this journey so worthwhile and made all of those struggles and opportunities to learn so worth it. About 5 years ago, I was fortunate enough to be invited into the hops industry. And little did I know how much hops had to teach me after over a decade in the brewing industry. A favorite author of mine, George Gurdjieff, said in his book, Search for the Miraculous, he said, in studying hops, you can learn about yourself. And I thought that that was such a beautiful thing to contemplate for a long time, especially on this journey. Few of the things that I found out along the way in studying hops that was really important for me and to myself was that collective experience and knowledge of multi-generational farmers. And what that meant to me was that I didn't have to surrender any of my knowledge and experience in this industry. And that started to help break down some of those identities that I really clung to so much. And that in putting down alcohol, I could experience all those benefits of happiness. I could create more time and energy for myself. I could do all of the things that I had wanted to do while maintaining the profession and the industry that I loved so much, and that I felt that I had so much to contribute to, but often missed out on those opportunities because, well, I just wasn't feeling so great. That was a really special lesson for me to learn. What I also learned in joining New Zealand Hops Limited, especially coming into contact with some of the greatest hop growers on this planet, was that you have to create the right conditions for your growth. And what that means in hop growing is creating a great environment with your soil. It means creating an environment with the right nutrients. It means having healthy roots or rhizomes that can allow the plant to grow healthily. And really what it came down to was that happiness is about sustainability. Being sustainable in life is resting. And that's a regenerative process. So when you rest and you pull back, you can have so much energy then to grow and develop. And I had spent 20 years and 1,100 attempts to change my drinking habits, that I missed out on that opportunity to create sustainability for myself. And I likely would have really burned out of this career a lot earlier than I ever wanted to. I'm really grateful for that opportunity. Hops, can grow up to 1 foot a day in the right conditions. I think for me, once I started applying the tools, I grew a foot a day in happiness. And I was able to experience tremendous growth personally and professionally only 481 days ago, when I made the decision to go alcohol-free. I'd have to say that it wasn't really a plan to stay alcohol-free forever. And I'll tell you about the tools that I used to get there, but it was really just about starting again and utilizing some of this knowledge from all of those past failures to help guide me in the right direction. And as we talked about, changing your mindset. One of the things that I had always wanted to do was go back to school and learn, and I had just never had the time to do that. Running across the country, moving 9 times for my career, chasing that external environment that I thought was going to deliver happiness. But when I signed up for my MBA in sustainable business from the Maharishi International University in Iowa, I learned that life finds its purpose and fulfillment in expanding your own happiness. One of the ways that we do that in our school is we practice meditation 2 times a day. We take that rest. Just like hops have the ability to rest in their own environment and then in the sun grow up to 1 foot a day. What I found was that by practicing that regularly, I was able to bring a new calm to myself. And in that calm, I was able to give myself the right conditions and changing my mind and my habits that started to last longer and longer. Just like a hop field that finds its strength and is regenerating itself year after year with the right conditions, and all of that knowledge and experience being able to be applied without having to put any of it down, but picking the best parts of it while still finding new information driven by curiosity to help you make the right decisions in life and try new things without giving up any of the experience that you've learned along the way, any of the knowledge. And then, despite how crazy life can be, and I know we can all relate to that after 2020, but despite how crazy life can be, all is well, because all is well on the inside. And for that reason, my cup can be full. But really what it came down to was letting go. I had to let go, and I had to learn about my higher self. I had to know that I could achieve anything. I had to allow myself to be free to dance my own dance. And then to just trust and let life unfold in a really natural and beautiful way, and that there was no need to struggle. So now I want to share my tools with you. So my fulfillment checklist, which is really my toolkit for becoming alcohol-free for myself, first started with, like I said, changing my own mind and my corresponding habits. So what were those habits? So the first thing I did was I started reading books that made me think differently. And I told you about what I identified with, that alcohol made me feel accepted and approved. It made me think in drinking, I was finding relaxation and fun, and that in doing so, I was the life of the party. And I also heavily identified with being feminine and attractive. as a result of having knowledge about beer and then participating in social events where beer was a big focus. Well, the first thing I had to learn was I cannot moderate. I'm kind of an all or nothing person. That was a tough pill to swallow, but it made me feel better after reading the book This Naked Mind by Annie Grace, another woman who came from the wine industry, actually, and wrote a book about changing the mindset and beliefs about alcohol that many of us hold. I was really careful. I didn't want to be disrespectful to an industry that had given me so much opportunity. By all means, a lot of success. All the things in life that I wanted to make me comfortable and happy, but something always felt like it wasn't right, like it was missing. So after I read that book, I decided to, instead of pretending that I was quitting something, to sign up for a challenge. As a really competitive person, and for those of you out there in sales, you'll know what I mean by that. By setting those milestones and those goals for myself in small incremental pieces, step by step, but not really having necessarily a plan. Not saying I'm going to become alcohol free today forever. I told myself 30 days would be a great start. In the first 10 days, which I used a program called 1 Year No Beer, which is a challenge group. I followed their curriculum. I started writing things down and answering their questions. I used a combination of exercise and fasting during the first 10 days, and the results were astounding. That went on to become a 90-day challenge. By the end of the 90 days, I had lost over 30 pounds. For the first time in many years, I was sleeping better than I had my entire life. I was being stopped by people and being asked, what did you do that's so different? Something's different about you. And for the first time, I knew that the smile on my face was an authentic smile. And it was a reflection of the happiness that I was starting to feel. And that voice inside saying, you can do this if this is what you want. So I changed my mindset and my habits. And I was really clear then to myself about what I wanted and then wanting to do it. And began to extend beyond being alcohol free. I remember after 90 days going on a vacation to Puerto Rico, actually, with two of my best friends. And they didn't even notice that I wasn't drinking anymore. But they did notice how happy I was. They did notice the smile on my face. The next thing I did was recognize those self-limiting beliefs. Recognize those self-limiting beliefs and started to change them. So when I thought I couldn't do something, I would find every way possible to try it, to read differently and to think differently, to get a support group that I could bounce those thoughts off of to see if I was going in the right direction or not. By being clear then about what I wanted, I was able to do it. Journaling was one way I was able to, flesh a lot of that out. By writing in a journal, which I hadn't done regularly since really the age of 15, which, by the way, I did recently go back and read my journal from my 15-year-old self. I don't know if I'd recommend that or not, but it was a wonderful exercise because even at that age, I could see the difference between the more critical thoughts and then my higher self. The part of me that I knew today I was tapping into to be able to achieve these things. And so journaling really helped me look back at the highs and lows of the 20 years of the 1,100 attempts to become alcohol free, of the many hangovers, the many regrets. But more importantly, what it allowed me to see was that I did have everything I needed to be successful. And it's an exercise that I would recommend to everyone every day. It's just to write down your thoughts when you wake up so that you can see the difference of what might be limiting you and what might give you the opportunity to be happy. And it is everyone's right to be happy. Meditation, as I mentioned, has been a huge tool for me. Practicing transcendental meditation 2 times a day gives me an inner rest and peace that I had never really experienced before. Better than any break from alcohol I'd ever taken, better from, any diet I'd ever done or any vacation or trip I'd ever taken. But the consistency of giving myself permission to stop my thoughts 2 times a day and just be present showed me a world that, well, I'd never really known before. Yoga, for me, was also a way to set goals and to get back into my body again. And, when I was using alcohol regularly every day, I would always dream of being able to do yoga and be flexible. And, until really last year, I wasn't even able to touch my toes. And there were a lot of other health markers for me that indicated I wasn't going down the right path to live a long and healthy life, which is what I really wanted. And recently, after 2 months of practice, I did a headstand. And now I'm working on a back bend. And it's just amazing to see what we can do with our bodies when we're healthy and fulfilled and happy and willing to challenge ourselves by setting those goals and getting help. And I'm so fortunate because being receptive has connected me to people everywhere that have so much to offer on this journey. Breathing. I found a lot of times before I was holding my breath. I was holding my breath because, well, I was trying to manufacture maybe the emotion of happiness. And that would cause me to feel like, well, really like an ungrounded electrical wire is what I've been called before. But what I mean by that is just taking a second to breathe and then bring myself back to that place where I'm present and aware. That really helped. I learned these things by, again, learning about myself and in studying hops, bringing on professionals that could teach me the meditation, yoga, and breathing techniques that would help me build my new life. I learned about my personality in a program called the Enneagram, which is a personality typing system. I learned things about myself that, well, I thought only I knew, but as it turns out, are actually quite common for people like me. That desire for approval and acceptance, well, it made me feel at least like I wasn't alone. But more importantly, it gave me a roadmap of how to develop and get better, to bring out the best aspects of myself. That curiosity, the desire to learn, the desire to teach, the excitement of life and all the possibilities and opportunities there are. Showed me that some of my biggest strengths are giving love and kindness and happiness to others, which is a wonderful thing to wake up to every day and feel so alive and have that gift to give back to others. And finally, I developed an appreciation for nature, which is better than any piece of art or music that I'd ever experienced before. And now all of those things come alive for me. But I had spent so many years being focused on a life that didn't really involve all that the world has to offer. And by spending the last 481 days in nature, I've reconnected myself. And I realized that all of us are part of one big, broader universe. And in that, I was able to cultivate and find happiness. One of the mentors in my school, Professor Anil, says that we have the capacity to be a net exporter of happiness. And in nature, I gave myself permission to find new things to deliver happiness to me, especially in the interim, and especially as I was learning about what it meant to have an alcohol-free lifestyle and finding a lot of ways to spend my time differently. And as much as time as I spent working really hard in the beer industry and developing my career, what I did find that I had missed out on the opportunity to balance myself. And in doing so, one of my biggest fears was that I wasn't going to be able to enjoy beer anymore. One of the things I hadn't spent a lot of time looking for was great non-alcoholic beer, which I have found there are plenty of good ones. I'm actually enjoying here today. I'll share with you a Athletic Brewing Company Free Wave Hazy IPA. So cheers to that team. You make wonderful beers. But that was part of my fulfillment checklist as well. I ended up at the end of 2020 starting my own brand called Aficionados, which stands for alcohol-free aficionados, or beverage enthusiasts that are people like me that enjoy non-alcoholic versions of beer, wine, and spirits, which I found so many great ones along the way, and developed a whole nother community of folks that were, again, a lot like me and are really enjoying all that they have found on their path. It's also allowed me to connect to people that maybe just want to take a break from drinking as well, like I had tried many times before, and giving them a lot of options and showing them all the happiness that there is in non-alcoholic beverages, and that they're made in many ways just the same way as the regular products. And that was a great lesson for me to learn. In closing, I just want to share a quote with the group, and then I would like to open it up for questions. And that quote came to me through a wonderful app called WIBS, which I highly recommend. It's an app for women, and it sends you little quotes throughout the day, kind of little motivating ideas and quotes to reflect on. And this one came up for me just not that long ago, and it said, "Be courageous enough to live a life you've chosen, not a life you've settled for. And even after 1,100 failures, you don't have to settle." So, in order for us to build the industry that we want, in order for us to build the world that we want, it's going to take a lot of people that are willing to fail bravely and courageously, to be vulnerable, to be able to share real emotion with each other. So, thank you all so much for allowing me to do that today. And thank you, Melissa, so much for the opportunity to tell my story. Cheers.
Just so happy you're here. Thank you so much, Meagan.
You're welcome.
Let's take a look. Okay, first one is, in the questions, I really enjoyed your talk. I'm jealous of your speaking skills. I call it the guilty hate spiral. How do you interrupt those bad thoughts?
Oh, well, thank you so much for that question. And it took me a long time to learn that. It's journaling helps a lot, because you can go back and read about your struggles, and then you can ask yourself, well, let me just say this. What I learned from school was that a lot of our thoughts actually come from our emotions first. And so one of the things I wasn't really in touch with for a long time was my emotions. I tended to be somebody who was really just very focused on being and acting happy. So by journaling, I was able to see like what emotions was I really experiencing, and then what thoughts were associated with that. And that was very helpful for me. Great question.
Great. Let's see, there's another one. Let's see. You mentioned you read books on your journey. Do you have any favorites to recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one that I mentioned was called This Naked Mind. I've bought that book for a lot of people since I started this journey. It was really a game changer for me. Annie Grace, I believe she was in the wine marketing business. So I really resonated a lot with her message. I thought she had just so many good points, but what she really did was she changed my mind. because she proved to me in that book that many of the things I believed made me successful and accepted by others because I felt that I'm in the beer industry, right? We have to drink beer.
Right.
She really just challenged those beliefs and said, well, that's not really true, and here's all the things that it really does for you. And again, for me, I think the challenge was not being able to moderate, and Annie Grace brought that to light for me. So that was really helpful, thinking about the fact that moderation isn't for everybody. And there's a lot of people like me that are sort of all or nothing people.
Mm-hmm.
And that gave me the ability to say, it's okay if I can't have any. And then, as I mentioned, I had a lot of great non-alcoholic options I didn't even think about were possible. I only thought at that time O'Doul's was my only choice. So she really changed my mind, and that was a great book. There's another book that I read right after that, and it's called The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober. That's a great book. Her stories were very extreme, and so part of it for me, I didn't resonate with all of it because I was really just, I was very functional in mind. I just felt bad all the time. I always felt like I was like I had a hangover, kind of. I just very sensitive to that. So reading her book showed me, I think, where I could have gone if things would have gotten out of control, and that was enough to scare me into saying, it's time, and I just didn't feel good. So I would say for me, This Naked Mind and The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober were my favorites. And there's so many other good ones. I even learned there's a body of these books called Quit Lit, which stands for Quit Literature. And so if you're trying to quit, there's a group of books, and they're all available through the service that I used to stop drinking, which was called 1 Year No Beer. And it's a great program.
I've heard of that. Okay, the next question. Do you think you could have found this balance without the introspection? I currently find it hard to even wrap my brain around meditation and time for self-reflection.
That's a really good question. I would say this, I was successful in being alcohol free for short periods of time, 30 days here, 45 days there. And then wasn't able to maintain it, basically because I wasn't really changing my habits and my beliefs. So what I would just run out of willpower, basically. And from what I've read, that willpower is pretty finite. And so if in order to access the ability to, regenerate your own willpower, if you will, your own strength, meditation is really pretty critical. It's a stress remover. I know it's difficult to find the time, and I will tell you this, until I understood why I needed to meditate, I didn't understand that. I just thought it was something I had to do. So therefore it's like exercise, take it or leave it if you don't have time. Now I know every day that if I don't do it, I cannot access that deep rest, and that, I won't function properly. So it's just like for me, brushing my teeth or taking a shower, and in doing so, improving my ability to communicate, but more importantly, maintaining that calmness that allows me to remain alcohol free, even in stressful times. The meditation has replaced that. And I was certainly spending more than 40 minutes a day thinking about drinking, planning to drink, drinking, or recovering from drinking. So this was really worth it. Yeah.
Okay. Before Jamie's wanting to get on screen to ask you a couple of questions. I'm excited about that. I have a question for you. See if I can frame it right. Early on in my marriage, when I was married and I had little kids, and I made a huge change in my own behavior, and I went to a 12-step program for adult children of alcoholics. And I completely changed my thought process and how I lived my life. And it was very disruptive to my family because my ex at that point said, you completely threw out the book that we knew how to follow, and you've added a new rule book, and none of us have it. How did it work with your family when you made such a drastic change in your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, I'm the type of person that like cuts my hair differently every once a month. I'm always trying something new, and I'm really into that sort of new age. If there's something interesting to try, so I think at first my family thought this was just a fad. Like, hey, Meagan wants to be alcohol free now, fine. And very supportive of it. It certainly did change the dynamic with certain people in my family where that was like our thing. We would drink together, or friends, we would drink together. That's what we did. So, but ultimately, I mean, after 90 days had passed and really like the biggest physical recovery had happened, because I had been drinking pretty regularly for like 20 years. I drank almost every day. There was very rarely a day that went by that I didn't have a beer. Obviously, I have 2 children, so I wasn't drinking during my pregnancy, but I did outside of those times, I was drinking pretty regularly and drinking more than what's recommended. So I was definitely exceeding what's recommended, which is because I'm not a moderator. So yeah, it did in some ways change that dynamic, but because I could have non-alcoholic beer in my hand, and just because I was so much happier, I actually think it improved relationships. And if anything else, it created an environment where my closest family members that had their own insecurities and struggles felt comfortable in saying like, how did you do this? Like, and nobody knew, like, that was the thing that I think surprised me the most, like thinking about my family. Nobody knew that I had tried to quit that many times. Because sometimes for me, quitting was like 5 minutes. I'd be like, I'm never going to drink again. And I'm like, oh, wait, there's a new IPA I haven't tried. I got to do that, So yeah, I think for me, that was what was really shocking. And when I just was very authentic with people and allowed myself to say the truth, because that beer had been such a big part of my life and that I still was so interested in beer, alcoholic and non-alcoholic, because of my job. I mean, I sell hops and I'm very into the community and I love the people and the culture. And that for me was such a connection that people could see I was so much happier, and just the belief was there, So it was uncomfortable at first, but it was really just me. I really didn't think I could do it and still feel like the same person. I thought I would lose again that credibility. But my family, once they saw the changes, I remember my mom saying like, I've never seen you this happy. And I'm a pretty happy person. So it was, to me, hearing that affirmation from people, but also hearing the shock of like, we had no idea that, you thought this was a problem or that you were hurting, and we're really sorry that we couldn't help you. Because I think people now see I look so much different, in many ways. And that's just the outside, it's the inside that really is the tremendous difference. But yeah, that's a great question. It did change for my family, but definitely for the better. And everyone's totally used to it now. And I mean, everyone brings me a 6-pack of whatever cool non-alcoholic beer they want me to write about or talk about. So yeah, it's been great.
Wow. Okay, so I'm going to give you another question from Caitlin while I try to push this button and bring Jamie Duran up on screen. I'm a little afraid to push the button with all of our tech issues today, but I'm going to push it. But anyway, Caitlin asked, how does the industry address your alcohol-free life?
Well, I mean, the industry in general is responding, right? I mean, non-alcoholic beer is the fastest growing category, but, besides seltzers. I, as a person who does a lot of beverage development with companies, I think that I found that the industry is responsive, which means there's an unaddressed consumer need. And I'm now a consumer of these products, I have found that there's a lot of options for me. So it's for me, honestly, I feel like so grateful that I quit when I did, because there's so many options for me. And as a person who really likes options and excitement and new things. So the industry is responsive. In terms of, if you're asking about people don't even notice anymore. That was just me. If I just tell people like, oh yeah, I don't order beer anymore. I'll take a sip of somebody's beer, and I can totally do that. Not everybody can. I can sample beer. I still can use my sensory, but I have limits on that. So that is one area I'm really fortunate. I didn't have to give up my sensory expertise. I didn't have to give that up, but I can still do those things.
That's
great question.
So
Hi,
Meagan,
Jamie.
this is Jamie's part of our team. Super excited to have her here.
Yeah, I really enjoyed your talk, and I'm really glad that you shared your story. I think it's really difficult for women to talk about being insecure, and I think that so often
start answering so we can move on.
We are insecure, right? So I do have a couple of questions. We'll get to what we get to, but I wanted to be fair to the person who upvoted a question in the question bar, and it had to do with letting yourself fail. I think that's an odd concept to wrap your mind around, and then an even bigger hurdle or activation to really embrace failure. So you had a first thought. I saw in your face you had something as soon as I said it. What were you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, it was, for me, a lot of it was about not passing judgment on myself. And in meditation, we learn that, you know, if you have a thought during meditation, just don't judge it. And I was nobody was a harsher critic on me than me, right? Then that's usually how you find people really to be, is I found myself criticizing myself all the time for failing. And when I stopped criticizing myself and being like, girl, you got this, don't even worry. Like how my mom would talk to me, like, honey, it's okay. Like, you failed this time because whatever. But the interesting thing was, once I made up my mind and my belief, when I read This Naked Mind and my belief system changed, and she says that in the book, she's like, once you basically unteach yourself these thoughts. So I would think like, I'm going to have a beer because I want to relax. Well, then I started thinking like, well, actually that beer is not going to help me relax. I'm going to have more than one because I know I can't have just one. And then X, Y, and Z is going to happen to my physiology, to my body, to my thoughts. And then I was able to be like, okay, well, I don't want that. And then when I was in that program, they just were feeding me with so much motivation along the way that I was able to take the whole collective. I didn't even realize I'd tried to quit 1,100 times. So the way it worked out for me was I had tried physically to quit 100 different times, but in my mind, I had quit on myself 1,000 times.
So that's where I got guys. Yeah. She's talking about once a week for 20 years. When she says 20 years, and she says 1,100 times, that's what she's talking about.
Nice.
So I had the opportunity to ask this question twice already, so you'll be the third person, but I think it plays into a lot of what you've been talking about and some other themes of women working. But how do you handle the imposter syndrome? We know what it drove you to, and we know when, you experience it. Is it different now? Is it better now? I think I have to constantly recommit to fighting myself. So
she's handling it right now.
How was it for you? And Melissa, your mic is totally active.
Right. Well, I was looking, there's questions, but if I pull them up, then I'm going to be covering your face and I don't want to.
Only you will see that.
Okay.
It won't be like that for the audience.
Yeah. So imposter syndrome. So yeah, I would say for me, a lot of it now is just being able to be vulnerable with people and show that emotion. And again, knowing that I don't put as much value on other people's approval or acceptance of me, which I'm still working on. I mean, let's be honest. There's days where I'm like, oh, that person doesn't like me, and now I need to go evaluate it. But at the same time, for all the times that happens, people are inspired and moved by your ability to be authentic, which for me meant not always pretending to be happy. And that was kind of my MO, right? Everybody's got a different way of expressing themselves. For me, it was like, get in there and be the happiest person, be the life of the party, no matter what. And, that was imposter syndrome to me at its best. So for me, now that I know I'm actually behaving as the person that I was when I was 15, when I was reading my journal and I saw this beautiful young girl with all these amazing ideas and creativity, layered in with a lot of 15-year-old imposter syndrome, but I knew that I still had a higher being even then. And to be able to be connected to that again and share my real self with people, I have found has been just tremendous and really developed my leadership capacity. So for everybody that's interested in being a leader, and we all have the ability to lead, it's really important to know that just being authentic and that it's not always going to be beautiful or happy is okay. And then if you have a bad day, let it go.
I think that leads really well into another thought that I had, and this is a good segue. So try to answer it in this like you still want to be a leader and amazing at what you do. And what were your fears about stopping drinking with who you are in your profession and how successful you've been? What were your fears that didn't come true? What was the things that you thought, this is going to go south so bad, and then here you are a year later and you were so wrong?
Yeah. Yep. For me, it was being a social creature. It was the social aspect. I really believed I couldn't be social without it.
I think a lot of people feel that way, or they hit the one or two feedback from friends and assume it was true for everyone. So what was it really like for you?
So what I found was, for me, I just needed to have a beverage in my hand that gave me something to connect to and talk to people about. So that was a great resource for me. And I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. So yeah, I think I thought I couldn't be social. I thought I couldn't be likable. I thought I would be boring. I definitely didn't. I thought my energy level would be lower. But because I was so much healthier and feeling so much better, it was totally the opposite. And you know that feeling when you go somewhere and you see someone you haven't seen for a long time and you can just tell they're different, that they've made some big change, and they're just happier. And then the way I was able to express it to people before, I talked about being receptive. So one thing I really struggled with was listening to people and not just thinking of the next thing I wanted to say. But once I really embraced being receptive, I was like, whoa, I am learning so much about people, and I am so curious of what other people have going on. So I wasn't so worried about myself and how I was appearing to people, because I didn't have space for that. I was too curious about acquiring knowledge and wisdom from other people and developing deeper relationships beyond whatever fun we were going to have tonight, And that for me was a big game changer. That told me, like, hey, you're even better without being alcohol free. That's totally fine. And you also don't have to, you also have to be okay with people that are wherever they're at in their journey. So if they make a comment or they ask a question that's kind of could be considered offensive, like, oh, how do you not drink when you're in this business? And I'm like, if I had $1 for every time I heard that question, I'm like, I do just fine. Like, I didn't drink when I was pregnant. I didn't drink, I don't drink now, like, because I can't, and I don't want to, and I value what it brings to me to live this lifestyle, and people appreciate it. And more often than not, those same people come back to me and are like, can you tell me how you did it? Because I kind of want to try. So it's been helpful.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Melissa, I can keep going, or if there's other
let me
questions you would like to ask.
Let me double check. How do you see the women presence in this industry?
The question is, how do I see the presence of women in this industry?
It's written as, how do you see the women presence in this industry? But I'm thinking the way you said it, Meagan, is how she meant it.
Yeah, first of all, coming into this business, 15 years ago, I 20 years spent drinking pretty excessively, but 15 years specifically in brewing and craft brewing. I've seen it change a lot. I mean, I came from the Boston Beer Company originally, so we were kind of an anomaly. We had a lot of women in our company, and was founded. When Jim and Rhonda founded the company, so we had our own kind of vibe, and I was very surrounded and empowered by women. So here's what I say: find your people, find whoever it is that can lift you up, that can give you those opportunities, get mentors. And that presence of women in this business is what has given me so much opportunity, and men too. I mean, men have been just as great to me. All humans have been good to me in this space, but particularly I have found that some of the women, they can understand your perspective, and they can give you that space to vent and be vulnerable. I've definitely cried in front of more women than men in work, but I feel now that we have more opportunity than ever. We can own it, but we have to understand the differences in how we are in men, just in the way we work. Women communicate totally differently than men. And this is something I've been so lucky to learn about in my graduate program. Is I've taken a communications class, a negotiations class, and now I'm taking a mediation course. And that's really, like, we were born to do that. We were born to help people collaborate and communicate more clearly, because we tend to communicate from a place of more emotion. which is really inspiring and is a great leadership quality. We also are really good at negotiating because we can help people get to their actual inner perspective and feelings, which don't often happen in business. A lot of people just come with their position and they want to bargain over it. And I think women just really have the capacity to allow people to open up and share their real perspective. And then you can separate those emotions from the real problem and you can make progress. And then in mediation, of course, instead of, arguing and fighting, you're finding different options that you can work together as a group. And I just think women add so much of that to this business. I see the tremendous efforts that women are making, and particularly around, things like sustainability, diversity. I mean, we're leading that charge, but we're bringing everybody to the table now. And that's a really exciting opportunity. And I just see so much more opportunity for us to do even better. So I challenge everybody to participate in that. That's why everyone is here. I mean, this would have never happened. This is like, the equivalent of what Craft Brewers Conference, where there were five breweries there in 1985, and now there's 5,000, or 6,000. So I think for us, we just have to continue the momentum and be open to one another and really leverage the skills that we bring to the table with communication and sensitivity and emotional intelligence, and even a level of spiritual intelligence that I think women just innately have that we can offer to the business.
I think what's really incredible about what you just said was that being authentic and honest to yourself led to greater connection outside of yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think was pretty powerful, and I'm trying to picture what that might look like in my head. But, because I would have thought, oh, put me aside, right? Mm-hmm. Put me in however I'm feeling right now and put it over here because I can't deal with that right now. I have to deal with you because you're in front of me right now. And what I think you just told all of us was that, no, put that right back, right where it goes. Mm-hmm. And that's what allows me to deal with you right now.
Yes.
And I don't think that I have ever done that.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying that and sharing that, because I think I'm still working on it for sure. But what I found was I had adopted a style of communication that was very non-assertive, because I didn't really want to show how I was feeling, because I felt that it would damage the relationship. Because that for me, once I learned about my personality type through the Enneagram, which was like very important learnings for me, my personality type in all 27 types is actually called the utopian visionary. So there you go. A person that only sees the positive, that often overlooks the worst case scenario, that puts way too much weight in like the most idealized version of everything. And that was really, again, that in itself was a self-limiting belief, especially on the days I was really struggling and I didn't feel good inside. I could not connect to people because I had this cognitive dissonance and emotional dissonance always happening. And so if meditation has helped me tease that out, where I can bring myself back to that calm place. And then when somebody else is venting, or I can tell that their emotions aren't in line with the words coming out of their mouth, I can move back to that space, and I'm like, all is well. Like, I'm good, and I can share with you how I feel, but I can create space for you to give me what you're feeling. And that just helps bring a lot of balance and acceptance to conversation, and is delivering more value in my relationships, personally and professionally as well.
Meagan, I don't remember Enneagram. Is it E-N-E?
Yeah, I just put it in there for you.
Oh, great, thank you. I couldn't remember how to spell it.
Yes, it is a game changer. So this is the only personality typing system that comes with a personal development plan attached to it for your type. And there's levels that you can move up and down. It's awesome. I would recommend it to anybody. I was working with a PhD in psychology that specialized in this program 480 days ago when I decided to stop to become alcohol free, and she really helped me.
That's fabulous. Any other questions for Meagan today? Jamie, thank you for coming on screen. Your questions were fabulous.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, mm-hmm. Stay in touch.
Mm-hmm. Any last thoughts, Meagan?
No, that's it. Thank you so much, Melissa, for the beautiful conversation we had a while back, and for this opportunity. I really, really appreciate it, and hope I get to do it again sometime. And I look forward to participating as a listener for the rest of the session. So thanks so much.
Absolutely. And the sessions are recorded too. So for whatever you missed, you'll be able to log in and watch them as well. So
awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you too.
Yep.
Take care,
Cheers.
everyone. Cheers.
Bye-bye.